Hey everybody, just going to make a short video for you on mediums, gels, varnishes, all that stuff that you see at the art store, and it's so confusing. So just going to try and clarify what you're going to need for acrylic painting. This is for acrylic painting. If you're painting in watercolors or oils, this is not for you. There's going to be another video on that. But today I want to talk to you and answer some of your questions about mediums and varnishes. First of all, I wanted to talk about gesso. Here's a cheap brand of gesso, which actually in its composition isn't a great deal different to an expensive brand of gesso. And gesso is more something that you're probably going to need if you're stretching your own canvases. When you're learning, and even, well into the future, you may never buy a raw canvas, raw linen, and stretch it, but gesso has been around for 100 years. It's a thick substance which is designed to put a coating on the raw fibres of the canvas or linen, so that the oil paint won't get to the canvas fibres or the linen fibres and eat away at it. So it's kind of like a barrier between the priming and the paint. You're painting on canvas boards, pre-primed canvases, pre-stretched canvases, they've already been primed, so they don't need this kind of barrier. So forget about that unless you get into stretching your own canvases and linens, and particularly if you get into oil painting. The next thing I want to talk about is mediums. So you've got liquid mediums, you've got gel mediums, and some of them are for glazing, some of them are for varnishing, some of them are for both glazing and varnishing. What's glazing? Okay, let's look at this Atelier brand of satin medium and varnish. So you can use this as a medium, a liquid medium. It dilutes your pigment. Whether or not you have liquid pigments or heavy body pigments, you can use this to liquefy them and spread them around. So people say, what is a glaze anyway? Well, a glaze is a transparent layer. So this looks white, but it dries clear. You can mix in your pigment, particularly a transparent pigment, and that's something that you've got to look at when you're purchasing pigments. Which ones are transparent, which ones are opaque. So they give good coverage to the opaque ones, and the transparent ones are particularly good for glazing because their molecules are so very, very tiny, suspended in the emulsion, that when you spread them out with a medium, they colour the area but without covering the area. So it's a truly transparent layer. And this satin medium and varnish doesn't give a very, 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 very glossy finish. Probably would if you build up layers of it. Different brands call it different things, and you also get matte varnish, which is possible to use as a glazing medium as well if you don't want to build up layers of glossiness. Matte varnish is very good to use between acrylics and oils if you're going to block in acrylics and finish a painting in oils, any kind of oils, whether it be water mixable oils, alkyd based oils, or traditional linseed oil mixed oils. You're going to want to get a nice matte finish. Some people use a little bit of that green fuzzy stuff from the kitchen and rub it back and make sure it's got a good bit of tooth. But some people also like a very matte finish on their paintings, so they use matte varnish. A good thing to have, and I didn't pull it out to show you, is spray matte varnish as well, or a clear fixative. Because if you're going to use glazing or varnish on a mixed media layer that may have some conte, some pastel, graphite, charcoal, these kind of things in layers on an artwork, you are going to want to fix them with a spray before you use any liquid, medium or varnish. I'm going to stop it here because I have a visitor. Hi, I'm back again. So I just wanted to review what we just talked about, which was liquid glazes and varnishes. So we've got a couple of different brands here. Acrylic glazing liquid, satin by Golden, very good brand. Hydroc will actually call this flow promoter, so that's a kind of a logical term. It does increase the flow. It actually is used as a varnish as well, and if you dilute it up to 20%, you can do that you know, most manufacturers say 20 to 25% water, clean, distilled or sterile, boiled, filtered water, can be added to a gloss varnish. It'll turn it into pretty much a satin varnish. Any more than that and you're going to lose the adhesion qualities of the product. And then we were looking at matte, less popular for your glazing and varnishing, but nonetheless good for some things. And there's an Italia brand gloss varnish, which can actually be used for layering and glazing as well as for finishing. Now there's a thing called a separation layer that you'll hear people talking about. These are people who believe that their work's going to end up in a museum and be conserved one day, and with acrylic paint, if you cover it in any kind of varnish finish, the chemicals that they're going to need to take that varnish off, if there's some damage to the work or it needs to be conserved, would damage the paint as well. So there are products that you can use to put on top of the paint before you varnish, so that when they take the varnish off they can work on the underneath painted layer. I'm going to assume that none of you watching this video are imagining your work in the museum being conserved, so it's probably not for you at this point. Get that varnish on your final work for two reasons. First of all, it protects your work from your basic things rubbing up against it, scratching it, you know, pollution floating around, dust, but it also pops the contrast in a work. Not less so the matte, but the satin and a gloss really pop the contrast, and so your work looks more finished and loved. So I've talked about liquids a lot. I wanted to mention, before I didn't have it with me, but the matte varnish and workable fixative. Workable fixative is more for charcoal pencil drawings, so you can continue to work on top, but it stops it sort of from moving and dropping off and flying around. But what I tend to use is a spray varnish. If I'm working mixed media and I'm drawing in the middle of painted layers, before using any glazing or any finishing varnish, I will always seal with this. And I use a matte because I don't really want to build up lots of glossy layers and different glossiness in one section to another. So that's a very handy thing to have. So that's probably enough about the liquids. Talking about gel mediums, what are gel mediums? You get matte gel. Different kinds, different brands have a matte gel. That is, there's a matting agent in, very similar thing to a liquid medium, and there's a gelling agent. So there's something that makes the liquid medium matte, and there's something that makes it thick. So there's a gelling agent in there. You can get your gloss gel. I've never seen a satin gel, but I'm sure they exist, but you can make it by mixing your gloss gel and your matte gel. And you even get them in a slightly, somewhere between a liquid and a heavy body gel. What they're good for is they dry transparent, so if you mix them with your pigment, you can thicken up your pigment, be it a liquid, a free flow pigment or a heavy body pigment, thicken it up even more to get very impasto techniques. That's pretty much what it's used for. So technically speaking, that's one way of building up impasto, big thick brush strokes or knife strokes that show on your painting. Another way is to use a modelling paste. A modelling paste is opaque, so it's not going to dry clear. Therefore, if you mix that with your pigment, not something that I recommend, you're just going to get a pasty, yucky effect. So it's better to use this in really interesting textural effects, building up the relief and then painting over it. Say for example in the ocean or a bark on a tree or whatever. Lots of ways you can play with that, knowing that you are going to paint over it in either a transparent or an opaque manner. It's lovely to see light layers glowing through luminescently, but you don't mix that with the paint. So I showed you the sprays, showed you the liquids, talked about gesso a little bit, and cleared up the issue of gels and what they're used for. You can actually water down a gel. In fact, that separation layer that we're talking about is often a watered down gel that's painted on between the finished acrylic work and the varnish layer. Anyway, hopefully you've got some of these in your kit already. If not, definitely some kind of sealing varnish is a must. And if you're going to learn glazing with me, it'd be good to have an acrylic based medium varnish that's good for both. And it is definitely nice to work in pasto sometimes. So you could get a matte gel, because if you're going to seal the work anyway, you can put a satin or a gloss finish, and that serves two purposes then. The matte gel, you'd have to put a matte glaze over it if you wanted to get rid of that shiny finish, so buy the matte gel if you're going to choose between the two. So I hope this has helped clear up the whole mediums and varnishes and what have you, because there are aisles and aisles of them. There are many, many more mediums than what I've spoken about here. Golden in particular have amazing textural mediums for building up very, very lightweight, high relief areas, and for getting gritty kind of backgrounds to work on. Lots and lots of them that you can explore and look into. But these are the basic things that you are probably going to be working with in the early years. Catch you next time. Just a final note, I forgot I didn't mention to you about retarder medium, another thing that you may have in your kit, or you may want in your kit. This is just a liquid, a transparent liquid that most acrylic brands of paint do offer. Sort of a glycerin based product that will slow down the drying or retard the drying process of the acrylic paints. I don't recommend using it on your work in summer on a hot day. It gets very tacky and creates, unless you're working in abstract techniques, make some interesting random marks, but you don't want random marks when you're blending an area, doing a soft focus sort of blending technique. So you can dilute it, you can put it in a spray bottle, or you can mix it in with the paint. It does slow down the drying. In winter it's very helpful when you're doing blending. I teach my students to have a spray mister of water handy, and to just get very, very skilled at using, from about 30 or 40 centimetres away, using their spray mister of water and blending very quickly, so their brush skills increase quickly. And if it's something that they want to do a lot of, soft focus blending, you know, gradients from dark through medium and light with no lines and no, you know, boundaries, so basically seamless blending, it may actually be something that you want to consider as to blocking in acrylic and then moving to oils for your final layer. Anyway, I just thought I'd mention retarder medium.